social media platforms. And well, you can be able to see it on various things like Facebook and Twitter and so on. But the best way to interact with these broadcasts, if you like them and want to do that, is to join HAPS using the link at the top on the description of the video. And this is another broadcast I'm doing as part of the 30 Days Wild project. 30 Days Wild is an initiative that's run by the Wildlife Trust, or set up by the Wildlife Trusts here in the United Kingdom. And it's about encouraging people to engage with the natural world. And the idea is every day in June, of which clearly there are 30 days, you get out and do something to engage with the natural world. They call it random acts of wildness. And I've been trying to do a broadcast, or at least something, on here and other social media every day during June. I've missed one day of broadcast, although I was out doing lots of natural history stuff at that time, but did at least put something out. And what I thought to do today is we would have a quick look at an interesting shieldbug that occurs here in Perivale Wood. I'll just briefly mention where Perivale Wood is. Perivale Wood is a little bit of ancient woodland and some interesting meadowlands here in northwest London. It's run by an organisation called the Selborne Society, of which I'm the chair, and I'm involved in managing and looking after this reserve and running the charity that looks after it. And I will put its details up on the top so people can find out more about Perivale Wood if you want to. It's a very interesting bit of habitat that's survived as London has really happened all around it. So that's where we are, and that's where I found this insect that we're going to have a look at today. So what I'm going to do, just to try and make all this work, is activate another camera. Whilst I'm doing that, I will make a picture I took of the same species a few years ago, the main image, so you've got something more interesting to look at whilst I'm off screen and or messing about something else. There's also going to be a bit of necessity to slightly tweak usage of microphones here whilst I do this, because when I activate the other device, you get a lot of feedback if I have the microphone set up wrong. So I'm just going to do that and be with you in a second. And what I'll do is I'll put up the top what the species is whilst I'm doing that, so people can be having a look at that. Okay, that was a bit weird. That wasn't what I was expecting it to do. But we'll do that in a moment. Okay, well let's leave that for now. Okay, I'm going to go and try and activate the camera, and we can have a look at one of these creatures live that I found yesterday. Just give me. Right, could you bring the device on in just a second? So, what we're going to do now is we're going to use another camera to look at one of these insects live, and I will just do that. The species in question, I'll do this, which will take over the entire screen and put its name up whilst I'm changing things. So here is an example of it live when the camera focuses, if the camera focuses. There we go. So that is Dirodares umbraculatus. Immediately going for somewhere where it's hard to get the camera pointed. Can I make it the big image? I can make it the big image, which is the next stage, which is this one. And if I zoom in a bit, it's gone upside down. Turn over. Knocked itself over. Just give me a second to try and turn it back over the right way. There we go. So quite a funky shield bug. It's got those obvious white shoulders, which is why it's sometimes called the white-shouldered shield bug. And it's been really awkward in where it's choosing to position itself in the box. And this is a species that was discovered new to Britain in 2013 from this reserve. Somebody visiting here who knows about these things found one of these and successfully realised it wasn't a species already known in Britain and identified it as this species. It's been seen a few times since, and we'll have a bit of talk about that. There's about 28 records on the National Recording System, and it's been seen really in a scattering of locations across the southern part of England. The food plants are bedstraws, the genus Gallium, which is a pretty common food plant. So it's not really clear that how it's arrived here. It could have been a natural colonist, it could have been brought in with something. So it's certainly an interesting species, and was glad to find another one yesterday. There it is underneath. So we'll just take this device off and return to me, I suspect is the main image. No, let's return to this is a photograph of one I took here a couple of years ago, and it's it's fairly easily found now. I'm finding it quite frequently actually, which is surprising perhaps, but maybe not. And what I'll do in a moment, I'll show us some information about where it is, where it's been seen elsewhere in the United Kingdom. But it's a fairly distinctive shield bug. And it's, yeah, they're attractive as shield bugs. Oops, no. Just fighting with the technology again. So they are quite an attractive shieldbug, and they're fairly distinctive because they've got these white shoulders and a sort of white mark in the middle. I've seen them on a few occasions here, and just to think about where they might be in the country. Let's see, let's give people a sense of the scale of it first, because it can be hard to judge the scale on these broadcasts. So if I make this the main image now, this is shown next to a little ruler. The divisions on there are 1 millimetre long, so that gives you a sense of the size of this insect. It's well, you can see what it is there, and it's a fairly small thing, but easy enough to see. It's not one of those microscopic things that's going to give you vast difficulty spotting it in the real world. So rather nice, and so with it being discovered new to Britain from this site, it still feels a bit exciting whenever I find one here, though I think I've probably had about 10 records or so of it since it was first discovered. It was discovered by somebody other than me. I think it was then refound in this reserve by a school party actually that was visiting as part of our education programme and was doing some insect study in the field. I happened to be helping them that day, and one of the children fished one of these out, which was rather exciting. So looking at the distribution of this species nationally, this is getting a bit messy now, isn't it? Let me take some of these images off. So this gives you a sense of where it's been seen in the United Kingdom. This is a map showing the data from the National Biodiversity Network, which is the network that collects wildlife records across the United Kingdom and makes them available to people. It's a good organisation. It's pulling in lots of data from lots of places and sharing those records. And you can see the distribution here is a bit scattered across the south of England. The cluster of dots to the northwest of London, that's centred around here and is probably the place where the most single records are, but you can see there's a scattering of dots further south, and then there's a bundle of dots somewhere near the Portsmouth at the bottom left of the screen. So it's about in a few places, and it's being seen now. It's likely, I suspect, that it has colonised in some way rather than having been an overlooked resident. It's not so small and so obscure that people wouldn't have seen this if it had been here before. But that's what it is. What we'll do is we'll leave that map up, but we'll swap some images around. Make this the main image again. Bring that back up. And take me off the screen because I'm boring compared to everything else. And leave you looking at them whilst I set something else up. So what I've got as a bit of an experiment now, because I've not done this on HAPS before, is I've got one of these that we captured earlier in the year that's a preserved specimen in the Selborne Society's collection. And that is under a camera. I'm going to try and get the camera on it under a bit of zoom, a bit of magnification, and I'm going to try and share the images from that camera here under HAPS. This is a lot of technology that all has to work together. Fiona says there could be ship imports. They could be ship imports. Although it's a bit surprising that we've got the cluster here in northwest London, which isn't obviously a port. London is a port, but this bit of northwest London, and not particularly from elsewhere in London. But the Portsmouth thing does suggest it could be something to do with marine imports. That's how they got it. Anyway, I'm just going to go and try and set this technology up. So what we will do is just start this device. So the image is here. Oops. So the images here are ones from a couple of other occasions. And with any luck, in just a moment, we'll be able to see one under a lens. Just give me a second to change what is displaying. Let me take that off and put just out the rest of the technology just a little bit, but we will get there any second now. With any luck. Bring this on and I'll make this the main image. So what we've got here is an image through my SLR camera, which shows one of these as a pinned specimen. And I can zoom in on that so we can have a look at a few of the features. I'm going to have to move slightly and play with the focus as I do that. So this will wobble badly as I disturb it whilst moving. But you can see, hopefully, this is really zoomed in here. Zoom back out so you can see the whole insect. You can see the structure of the whole insect here. And you can see the white shoulders, which we might zoom in on in just a moment. And you can see if you look in this closely, that within those white shoulders, there are quite a few dark spots. Which is just, you wouldn't necessarily pick that up staring at it with your naked eyes. This is very clever. It's certainly pushing my technological skills to the limits. I'm pretty sure there should be a way to make HAPS just recognize the SLR as another camera and be able to just dump the images straight out of the camera into HAPS as if it was a camera. But I haven't made that work yet, so I'm cheating by using the camera control program that's used for taking remote shots. You can have a bit of a look at the head and the eyes here. You can tweak the focus. You can see I've got a very narrow depth of field on this. But if we zoom in there a little bit, you can see the eyes and the shoulders. And a bit of the structure. We still have the wide. what's going on there. Thank you, Fiona. I can see what's happening. It has an annoying tendency to open a different window for the zoom window, which means I'll have to present a different window. Just give me a second. This will temporarily show me and then do something much more interesting, I suspect. Give me a second. Right, there we go. We should, in just a second, be seeing a zoomed in window. Let's just remove that. So let's put that on fully. Hopefully now we should be able to see more details of that's reasonably in focus. So you can see there the shoulders have got these white spots inside them. Not working now, Fiona. The problem is that when I'm using the thing to look through the camera, that's taking up my screen, so I can't actually see the HAPS interface. There's probably some very complicated way I could do all of this. So this is my photographic specimens setup, which I talked about on the broadcast yesterday. But essentially it's a macro lens with a 5x close-up lens on it and a ring flash underneath that, creating a lot of light. So you can see the structure of the shoulders, and then if we go down and we have a look at the body, again I'm going to tweak the focus. You see that the depth of field is incredibly narrow on this, at least in this live shooting view. It's but you can see there all of the punctuations in the middle of the body, and you can see that white sort of crescent that's on the back. So that is a pinned specimen that we took a few months back and just kept in a collection here as a way of proving the record, allowing anyone in the future to come back and re-examine that, which is always useful. So that's the white-shouldered shieldbug that we found. I will go back to its white shoulders. Given that's its name, that's what we should be showing people, I feel. I mean, you see how much that wobbles from just me touching the camera very, very gently, which is interesting. So, what I'm going to do is leave that going, go back to HAPS. And we'll do a few other things. So that's probably all I was going to say on this one, really, is that it was an interesting species, I thought, one that we've found several times now, but interesting to just see how these things are colonising and arriving here in Britain. And I will leave us ending on that image. I will put up on the notifiers again what the species was. Just give me a second so people know what it is. So this is white-shouldered shieldbug, a relatively new addition to the British list, first found for the United Kingdom here in Perivale Wood, and now showing up pretty frequently here. I think I've probably seen 4 or 5 already this year. And that's its name. It is the white-shouldered shieldbug, or Diodares umbraculatus. and all rather an interesting species. So that's me today. I'm going to end the broadcast now. There'll be more stuff later as we go through June for 30 Days Wild, and I will hopefully see some of you then.